Great. Welcome to this new seminar. We are just letting people into the room, so we'll just wait a minute or two until everybody has been able to log on and be present. Numbers are going up very fast. We're expecting, there are apparently 300 people registered, which is a sign of how important this issue is, evidently. So we'll wait another minute or two.
So can I ask, because I've just literally been pulled into this today, I had no idea what it was about. Who are the people that are coming to this weapon? I thought it was just us six. I had no idea there was 300 people coming.
Well, I'm getting abuse from them already, so they obviously can see us.
There is a chat box, and I should have asked you, when you arrive, can you just say hello and put your name in the chat box, and then everyone will get a sense of who is here, because obviously we can't see all 300 people on the screen.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi everyone.
Hi everyone.
Oh, we've got some great. Oh, let's go Blocker. Hello.
Yes, lots of old friends, familiar faces, and
so many amazing organisations on this list as well. I hope you're all doing okay. It's good to all be here together, and amazing to see you all. Really amazing.
I'm just going to say an individual hi to Alice Botham. Stop texting me now. Thank you.
Hi, Andy Stratford.
Okay, the numbers are kind of settled down now, so I think we'll start the introductions at least, because we don't have we only have an hour, which is deliberate to try and keep some pace to it, and because we'll spend too much time on these screens these days. So welcome, I'm Francois Matarasso. I'm a community artist and a writer, and I've been asked by EEA to chair this webinar. We have a great panel of people with enormous expertise in outdoor arts from very different perspectives. Before I introduce them, let me first of all introduce Dana Kahava-Segal, who is the chair of Emergency Exit Arts, and who welcome you on behalf of the organisation and say a little bit about what we have been doing.
Hello everyone, so thank you again Francois, and thank you to all our panellists who will meet throughout this hour together. So my name is Dana Kahava-Segal. I am the co-chair of Emergency Exit Arts. So I've been a trustee with the organisation for the last 3 years and a huge admirer of its work. I couldn't be more proud to really be leading this conversation with you all today and really bringing that leadership and innovation and thought leadership back into the idea of we are creative beings here. What can we do to try and approach this crisis and still bring creativity to the people who need it most? I am going to just be talking a little bit about really, if you were here with us on the last webinar, just to give you a quick summary of what we discussed and a little bit of answering a few questions that you had from the last time as well. So Pablo, if it's possible, if you could enable my screen sharing, that would be brilliant. But in the meantime, I will just carry on as we are. So last time when we joined for the Loosening Lockdown webinar, we just talked a little bit, and it was a very speculative conversation about what these events might look like as a result of the pandemic. One of the key things that we were able to, I think, all agree on was the fact that it is all about starting small, local, and meaningfully, you know, doing what we can on the doorsteps that we have. And something that EEA has been leading on for the last few weeks have been operating and doing kind of distant street parties, of course, without others coming or driving significantly long distances across the country to attend them, but very much focused in and rooted in on the people who are working, living, doing everything within their homes, and finding opportunities to just build their confidence that little bit more, to get out on their doorsteps, have a chat with the people next door, and really get away from the screens and just do something a little bit creative. And so start small, start hyper-local, and thinking a little bit about that. Now, with that in mind, there were a few things and a few key issues that came up from the last webinar that we just wanted to address from the very beginning. The first one of that, oh, and actually just before I move on, I'd love to just share a couple of examples that people shared with us as a result of our last webinar as well. So there's been some lovely mini roving performances happening over the last few weeks. My personal favorite in the corner here is the Elton Wrong, which is a lovely piece of work, just roaming some local spaces there. If you are doing any small scale local work, whether that's roving or street parties, do let us know, share those images with us, because we'll be doing these webinars every 2 weeks, and we'd love to kind of share best practice and the experiments that you're all doing out there whilst these lockdown measures are being introduced and changed and announced as they are in the way that they are. So one of the key questions was, okay, well, what's the evidence around whether the outdoors is a safe space or not? Just some key things about that. There's been some very interesting research, although we couldn't bring an epidemiologist onto the panel today. We tried to do a little bit of homework, and we will share all these links with you afterwards. So do review the webinar afterwards to access these links. And what is emerging from some of the evidence that we found is that outdoors is technically a little bit safer than indoors, and that's been through some early research. It's not all verified, it's not all proved and tested yet, but from early interventions, there's definitely evidence that the outdoors can be a safer space. And the other thing that's came about this week as well, of course, is that there may be changes to the distancing advice in England, which might allow closer contact than 2 meters. So again, suggesting that outdoor spaces could be a place for us to have safer events. Now, of course, this presents a significant opportunity to the outdoor arts sector to be able to reintegrate people back into crowds and back into feeling safe. The other main thing that we wanted to talk about really was just to share those examples. So if you have any suggestions for topics, speakers, or any images of work that you've done, please do send those to our address. As I said, we're doing these webinars regularly. We'll be doing the next one on Wednesday, the 10th of June, and then every 2 weeks. We will make this video available to you from tomorrow at 10 AM on our website. So if you are scribbling notes, don't worry too much. Try and kind of be within the conversation, and you can always look back on that afterwards. And also, I am a fundraiser by nature, and I would love to just invite you to support the organisation if you can, so that you can continue to access these webinars that we're providing, just so that we can keep paying that platform and bringing these wonderful voices together. And just on a final note, a very personal note, it's been 40 years now that Emergency Exit Arts has been going as a company. I'm sure all of you know that there have been significant highs and significant lows over the last 40 years, but we are still here, and we are confident that there will be a good re-emergence of the outdoor sector as we emerge from this. And we're very, very thrilled to have you here today, celebrating with us. Not in the way that we'd expected, but thank you all so much. So I'm going to hand back to Francois now, who's going to kick us off on this week's discussion for the webinar.
Great. Thank you very much, Dana. Our plan this afternoon is we're going to hear from the panelists in a moment, and we'll do a couple of rounds of hearing their views on how the present situation has changed and the outdoor art scene, and what some of the opportunities might be and some of the solutions. It's important to say this is, everybody keeps saying, it's an unprecedented crisis. It's certainly true that it's full of uncertainty, and none of us can be sure what is going to be the right way to proceed or the right answers. So nobody here is being set up to give you the solutions. We've created this conversation as a way to share experiences and ideas that I hope, and I'm confident, over time will lead to how we find our way out of this present situation. Okay, let me begin by turning to Rachel Wood, who's Arts Development Officer at Oldham Borough Council and is responsible for events in the town and a lot of the community outreach and community arts activity. Rachel.
Hello everyone. I'm Rachel Wood. I'm the Arts Development Officer at Oldham Council. Focusing on outdoor arts and events, I currently the artistic director and event manager, multiple hats, and working in local authorities for six large-scale events mainly across the town centre. These include from light nights to street theatre festivals, to bonfire night, to our Christmas town centre programme. So all very different. I've been working with the local authority for 20 years, but in this role for 10 years. So I've seen lots of changes, but also lots of fantastic work over that time. And the local authority I work for has shown great commitment to outdoor arts and the importance of that for our town centres especially, and for local people as well to see. At the moment, our challenges are, as I said, I've been normally, not all of my work is at events, but 6 of the events across the year are currently on hold. We have had to postpone one event so far officially, which was supposed to have taken place the past weekend, which was our Transport and Arts Festival, which we do with the Spare Parts Partnership based on the Foul Coast. And so we've only had to postpone one so far. Our last event, which was successfully delivered, happened at the end of February. So that was able to go ahead just before a lot of the social distancing was put in place. We're currently looking at recovery plans. So not just looking at the current government guidance, but also looking at alternatives so we're ready to go, because I think people's confidence and the measures that are put in place at the moment are changing. We're not sure how fast those are going to be relaxed. And we need to be ready to make sure our events programme is robust enough to be able to take place in whatever form that takes. So when I say looking at recovery plans, we are looking at whether the event would take place in its normal way, but with extra measures in place to make sure it's safe and appropriate at this time. Or looking at alternatives, lots of work in our current work is looking at a digital format at the moment, and seeing what we'd be able to do within that, but still keeping the ethos of that event and not losing that, and keeping our audiences engaged, ready for when we are back in the physical sense, if it does have to be in a digital format. But as an event manager, our primary aim is to keep audiences safe, but also keep our team safe and all our performers and contractors safe. And at the moment, it's very hard to risk assess and do an event management plan, as lots of other people who I'm sure are listening to this webinar are in that same position. But I do think as a sector, we are not risk averse because of the nature of what we do. And also, I think we will show confidence and creativity at trying to make the very best of whatever situation as this year unfolds. Hopefully moving next year into a much more normal place, if that is possible.
Great, thank you very much, Rachel. I'm going to turn to Gaynor Moyle now, who is a company director for Precision Broking, and because Rachel has raised the question of risk assessments and things like that, and it would be really good to have your take on how outdoor events companies and artists can manage those questions of risks and insurance.
Okay, hi, my name's Gaynor Moyle. I've got to be honest with you that I don't think there's any difference in the way you should be behaving in terms of risk assessment, other than you are supposed to take reasonable precautions, and you should be following government guidelines and anything that comes out from the HSE, etc. I don't know. I think most people, the most questions I've had from people has been more to do with, do I have cover for coronavirus? And if I don't, I'm not going to be operating at the minute. And can I have some money back, please? Which is what I'm doing at the moment. So I mean, I don't know. I work on a specific specialist facility for pyrotechnics and production services. And the facility we have does not give any cover whatsoever. It's an absolute exclusion. So I think, maybe you ought to ask your insurance broker or insurers if there is any cover. You can also ask your insurers whether they're prepared to give you a refund or lapse your policy, or give you a sort of, if you're not operating at all, give you some kind of reduced cover. So, I mean, what I'm doing at the minute is giving people some cover whilst they're sort of pottering around their premises, not actually doing any outside events. And sorry, can you hang on a second? I've just had a delivery man turn up. Sorry, yes, I'll take it, thank you. Yes. That's typical, isn't it? So what we've done is we've limited people's business descriptions so that basically they can do some clerical administrative work. They can potter around their storage or their warehouses, but they're not allowed to do any event work. And we charge a very minimal premium. And then the idea is that once the government lifts the restrictions and you're all looking to come back, you would then go back to your broker and give a sort of a guesstimate of what your turnover might be going forward, and we'd look at changing premiums then. All we're trying to do at the moment is to help you guys get through it. The amount of phone calls I've had and emails with people saying they just can't pay the premiums and that they're not going to get anywhere near the turnover. But in terms of your original question, in terms of your risk assessment, as long as you're taking reasonable precautions and you've written them up and you're following the guidelines, you're not going to get any, well, you're not, with me, you wouldn't get any cover for COVID, but you might, if you're not following guidelines, have an incident that happens that might not be covered, which is not COVID related, but because you haven't followed the guidelines and you haven't acted reasonably, the claim may be turned down. So that's my pitch.
That's great, Gaynor. Let me ask you one particular question that occurred to me listening to you speak. As people move into this doing things again, but we're still going to be in an uncertain thing. The government is talking about local lockdown, so it's possible that people might be having to cancel an event they put a lot of work into.
Yes.
Would it be possible? Do you think it's going to be possible to have insurance against cancellation, not against COVID, but against the unexpected imposition of that kind of regulation?
In short, no.
Right.
Because basically what you're talking about, I mean, when I say absolute corona exclusion, it means anything, a perceived threat, anything at all that's indirectly or directly related to it. And any cancellation insurance is not going to provide, you might be able to buy cancellation insurance, but if the reason the event is cancelled is because of, not because of an outbreak of corona, but because of a limitation on what you can do, no, that I can't, that's not, definitely not going to be covered.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Right, we'll go to Brian Cleary, who's Managing Director of the Safety Advice and Event Management Company, Sigma, and who has huge experience of very large and quite small events of different kinds. Brian.
Hello everybody. Very scary seeing the number of people who have signed on here. And thanks everybody for all the texts that are distracting me. Apologies for that. This is a very, very interesting time. You can call it difficult, but it's also it is interesting. And I think I'm really interested to hear what Gaynor said there about insurance, because as a safety advisor, I have professional indemnity insurance. And I wonder if it covers me for giving advice to people with regard to COVID-19. I don't know. I need to find out with my broker.
I don't know the answer to that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
I think the three main issues that we have to deal with at the moment with regard to going forward on outdoor events is social distancing, and that includes the numbers of persons that are allowed to get together on a site, fear versus confidence, which I'll come back to in a second, and liability. And liability, I think, is probably going to be. I work in risk management as in safety risk management. But there are people who work in risk management with regard to money. And if you're expecting a promoter or an organizer to put on an event and risk their money, they will want to know who the liability lies with if there's an issue regarding coronavirus. And I'm talking mainly about if somebody contracts the virus at their event. And then there's an investigation into social distancing and all those other aspects. I think that's going to become really important. I'd like to be really bullish, because I normally am, and say we'll be back doing events by end of September, October, across the board. I can say that. It might not happen because people won't be prepared to take the liability and the risk from that side, which is where this fear against confidence has come. Fear has worked really well. The government's done a fantastic job of scaring everybody, staying in. Don't get together, don't see your family, stay in, lockdown. It's worked, everybody's gone for it. You know, fantastic that we've got the technology to be able to stay inside and watch, talk to each other, watch TV all day. It's great. What we need now is confidence. And one of the biggest issues we have at the moment is we're still talking about death rates of people. And it's terrible. People are dying. We understand that. But more and more people are surviving. And that should be the message that now starts to come out. How many people are surviving? How many people are beating the virus? How are we beating the virus? When can we get back together? Which is the biggest challenge for the arts and events industry is the social distancing. Any event, any large outdoor event that's trying to do what it normally does with social distancing, it's going to be very difficult. Because if you're the organizer, even if you give the amount of space that you need to give social distancing for everybody, if you have a queuing system, that means people are 2 meters apart. Once people get into your event, once people are at your event, whose job is it? Whose responsibility is it to enforce social distancing? That's my big question. I can't see how that would happen. I've been asked, I've had a request this week to help provide some stewards for a shopping street where they want to social distance, and they want stewards to tell people you're not doing it properly. Is that the kind of world we want to go towards? Or do we just want to wait a bit longer and come out properly? I'm struggling with that at the moment. I'm being asked to do lots of risk assessments for people. For me, the coronavirus regulations that were brought in March finish on the 26th of September. I don't see the government at the moment looking to anything to extend those. And in fact, the whole route map to getting back to doing events and being out there in shops and restaurants all leads through August towards September. Then there's a big question mark in September. So I think we should be preparing for events. We should be planning for events. On the social distancing side, we should maybe be looking at the queuing, toilets, welfare, those kind of areas. But with regard to an event, for example, a large arts event or a large rock event or something like that, where people are going to stand together, you're never going to get them to socially distance.
Thank you, Brian. It's interesting. People have probably seen by now the research produced by Indigo on audience attitudes, and I noticed that the area that people are most reluctant to go into is standing events. You know, that sense of being in a crowd where you can't keep yourself apart because you're just in a crowd of people. It will take a long time for people to feel comfortable with that kind of thing.
Well,
Let me go.
sorry to interrupt, Frank, but that's what events are for. Events are for people to come together to experience it together. And so if people keep talking about a new normal, we don't need a new normal. We need to get back to normal, because the new normal is something different. I'm not saying we can't do something different, but if we want to get back to events, we have to be able to get together and rub up against each other in a crowd.
Yeah, thank you. That takes us on nicely to Takki Sulaiman, who's Assistant Director of Community Cultural and Leisure Services in Greenwich, and who is already thinking and planning about what might happen from September when normal starts to, well, we start to try and find whether we can get back to normal and what it is. Takki.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and great to be on with so many wonderful organisations, and thanks to Emergency Exit Arts for organising this series. Things like this are crucial to lifting our spirits so we can share our best practice and expertise. The communities part of my job role in the Royal Borough of Greenwich is instructive, actually, because I'm leading the community hub, which is delivering food to people, prescriptions, befriending, providing a whole range of other kind of social services using volunteers. And as part of that, I get access to the latest government guidance on contact. So this morning I was in with a meeting with our public health directors, and they are setting up really quickly local contact tracing. You'll have read about it in the press, systems, and the definition of contact going forward and how they're going to investigate people is defined as being under 2 minutes under 2 meters for 15 minutes. So that's a really interesting and quite instructive analysis, if you like, of the government's attitude to what constitutes reasonable risk. And with that in mind, what we've done in our attitude to outdoor events, we were due to hold a whole series of events through May, June, July and August called the Royal Greenwich Festivals. And a number of organisations received some funding from us for that. We're a borough used to 20 million tourists a year. Many of those tourists are day trippers, they are visiting London from abroad. We are going to lose that entire market. That market supports 16,000 jobs inside our borough, 16,000, which is phenomenal. So we were very keen to think about this crisis in a different way. We think sometimes that if we look at this as a kind of, in a completely risk-averse way, we will do more harm than good. And many of you listening to this will know that your organisations are under existential threat. We know about the benefits of getting access to creativity, to participation, to cultural activities as well, the well-being benefits. So we've taken a view, listening to the runes from central government, that lockdown will begin to be eased, obviously from next week, we've heard about that, then further high street activity from the 15th of June, and then other events beyond that. We know that from the various British attitude surveys that the public mood is beginning to turn as well, both in terms of wanting to stick with the lockdown, but also in terms of thinking about the worst is behind them. So our planning, we have a very enterprising organisation. Tourism is another one of my areas of responsibility. And Visit Greenwich has been tasked with setting up this recovery event, Greenwich Together. And we're trying to, and I think a number of speakers and panelists have talked about this, confidence, trying to instill confidence back into our communities and visitors alike. We know that if we start again in the end of August and into October, we will obviously have to undertake a range of risk assessments, but we also know that we're going to have to give people confidence that our events are going to be safe. And the way to do that, we know that Visit Britain is developing a kite mark system so that organisations that volunteer and adhere to that kite mark system, they'll know that there will be a national standard of what is safe. And it's that kind of proactive marketing approach to getting people out again I think Brian said, you know, the government has done such a good job about keeping people at home that fear is actually the biggest thing at the moment. And it's going to be huge, I think, to turn around. There's still going to be groups who are vulnerable and who are not going to be able to leave their homes to come and enjoy our outdoor activities. So in terms of then what changes, our outdoor event that we're planning loosely for the end of August right through to October is we're looking at a mixture of existing 2-metre compliant events. We will have stewards. We will design the layouts to make sure that's possible, and we've asked for bids on that basis. And we're asking those previous participants of the Royal Greenwich Festival season to readjust their event plans in that light. We also think funding is an issue. We're going to struggle to raise the additional funding to bridge that marketing campaign. We're going to be asking the commercial sector to stick money into that. Those 16,000 jobs, they're not all in arts and cultural organisations, obviously, they're in the wider hospitality and tourism sector. They have an interest in making our borough open again. So really, really keen to listen to what you guys have to say about your plans as well. But we think that if we don't push our events out there, our outdoor events, to start to reinstill confidence, we will do irreparable damage to the arts and cultural sector. Because after all, the indoor arts and culture sector will be the very last to come out of lockdown. And one of the other projects I'm involved in is a £41 million arts complex, a new cultural quarter for Woolwich, which was due to open in September, but we've got no workers on site, and they're going to be burning cash because they've got staff. So that is also an issue. But in that sense, I think, as other panelists have suggested, outdoor events are a potential advantage and potentially the way to go. So we're looking at online as well, and looking at that mix. And here's another question for colleagues out there. Given that there's so much online content, both paid for and free, should we be encouraging you all to put your content online? Will it be any good? Can it compete? So that's, in terms of quality. So that's the other aspect that we'll be looking at. But we will be asking our Royal Greenwich Festivals crew to come up with innovative ways and creative ways of reaching our audiences. So that's me.
Takki, let me ask you a question that's come up in the chat. People are very interested in the Visit Britain kite mark, and also the possibility of whether, as a sector, there is potential for people to contribute to help develop some national standards. Whether this is something that as a sector, it's time to get together and to establish some common ground. What do you think?
So Visit Greenwich is part of the London and Partners marketing group for London. So they do get access to some early information. So we know that Visit Britain are developing a kite mark. I know very little beyond that, including as when it will go live. But they know that if they're going to instill confidence to get people out again, get people moving, spending, communing with one another, people have to be given confidence, and a kite mark is a thing that people have all agreed needs to be delivered. Oh, here we go. There you go. So others are saying that they're working on the kite mark. Visit Brighton is also working with Visit Britain on the kite mark. So I think it's worth going via Visit Britain if you've got something specific. If you haven't got a local, a local destination management organisation in your local authority area, do go direct to Visit Britain, and we'll circulate some links afterwards.
Great, thank you, Takki. Let me go to Dana again now and ask you a little bit about how you think the economics of this sector might be affected by everything we've been hearing.
Big questions. Thank you though. And just to qualify, so when I'm not acting as the chair of Emergency Exit Arts, I work as a fundraising and management consultant, primarily with arts and cultural charities, but also the wider charitable sector as well. And so I guess I'll be reflecting a little bit on the wider challenges and opportunities that I've seen across the sector. The last few weeks and months have been very strange for fundraising in the arts. As you know, a lot of private trusts and foundations, as well as our statutory bodies like the community funds, heritage funds and arts councils, have completely pivoted their investments towards rapid emergency survival funding for the organisations that they already support. And on the whole, most of the funding has gone towards organisations that are already connected to and familiar with or have been funded by those funders as well. We're in an interesting phase now where, now that a lot of that funding has been distributed initially, it seems that these funders are now looking to reflect a little bit. So we've seen people like Esme Fairbairn releasing surveys asking the sector about what sort of support they need next. Arts Council have a live survey at the moment talking about, again, what could they be going to say to the government in terms of needing more support for the sector. So it seems like coinciding with the social distancing measures that will be kind of in place towards the end of September, to me it also seems that that's where the funding cycle is matching, in terms of decisions will be made by that period by some of our bigger funders and our private funders as to what the next steps of fundraising will look like in our sector. That means that we're in a bit of a period of unknown at the moment. They're reflecting, we're trying to keep up with it as much as we can alongside them. But what I would say is that I see it also as a significant opportunity for those of you who might be looking to pivot your work to online at the moment, or conduct some of those small scale, local, hyper-local experiments about building people's confidence out from their doors in local communities. That's a fantastic opportunity to build some demand and build some evidence that you can then take to funders at a later stage once those plans are more fleshed out, to say, look, we've tried this out, it's working, this is the sort of thing that you need to support in order to reconnect our communities, in order to re-engage people with arts and culture. So any role that I think organisations can play in leading the way towards what creative solutions might look like in terms of presenting outdoor arts or outdoor events with creative social distancing, that of course is in line with the practical regulations, is really an opportunity. But you know, given that the summer period that we're so used to in the outdoor arts would be drawing to a close at that point, we might be looking at quite a long time before we can make some of those bigger, more meaningful events, especially if we have to fundraise as well.
One of the questions I've been asking myself over the recent weeks is whether the right strategy is to try to get back to normal, or whether it would be wiser to say to cancel plans for the next 18 months and put in place new plans, new ideas that you can be reasonably confident respond to the social distancing rules that are likely to be in place. And I don't know what, you know, for each organization, the choice of which direction to go in is a very different one.
I mean, I think at Emergency Exit Arts, you know, we've taken the decision to do things like this, where we are sitting down and we're reflecting with experts and peers, and to try and understand what creatively we can adapt for the future. But we've also been continuing to deliver, you know, we're doing some work at the moment in Thamesmead, delivering cultural events there via online vehicle, which is a completely new form for an outdoor organisation that's been working this way for 40 years. So I do think the spirit of both is important. I agree some organisations probably need to prioritise one over the other, but where possible, I think it's important to do both, because there's just as much learning we're making as an organisation by doing something different, but continuing to try to do, as much as we are sitting back and reflecting and planning for a much longer future.
I think you're right, that the more platforms that people use, the more chance there are to get back to where you should be financially, but also as an art form, the internet isn't, you know, it's been used a bit, but it's only just being tested now. The other thing about using this kind of digital media is that it gives the arts organisations a fantastic opportunity to push themselves. Even just on this chat, I've just seen the Desperate Men pushing their film on the chat that's just gone past. Typical of them, you know, seeing an opportunity and trying to get in there. But that's the way to do it, and there are these opportunities. One thing, I hope it's okay for me to ask a question. I was going to ask Rachel from a local authority point of view, because the local authorities are going to be key to a lot of this. From a local authority view, what are you hearing from the people upstairs, from the people above you? What's their feeling about how we go forward?
I think at the moment, the people upstairs and are much more in higher roles than me within local authorities and in Oldham are busy delivering emergency services to communities, and quite rightly, I think we are further down the pecking order in, so to speak, as in making those decisions. So I think that's why I mentioned earlier about we are looking at lots of different options within recovery plans, so that we are ready to give them options for them to support us in making the right decisions when it's the right time to do that. So at the moment, I'm not hearing a lot, but that is purely because you know, the leadership teams within local authorities and my wider colleagues are delivering food parcels and setting up the tracking service as we speak, and making sure people have got prescriptions. And I think that is the right thing to do. What we have been doing, just to jump onto another thing, is going back to the digital thing, so not to ignore that, is looking at digital, and I don't think digital replaces a live outdoor event that brings our communities, brings tourists to an area. It will nowhere replace that. It's part of the whole of humans, and what we want to do is be together generally. But what it has enabled us to do is to engage with audiences. It's to keep people in to remind them who we are and what we do, but also to keep connecting with them and to reach out to people who might be feeling isolated. Looking at the outdoor sector, what we have been doing in quite a small way in Oldham, I noticed Joe from Phil's Paradise, some of the performers that we would normally have come in entertaining people in Oldham across our events programme. We've been engaging with some of those outdoor arts companies on small specific commissions, which are going out across YouTube and our social media channels on different themes. One, it keeps us connected with those artists who I know I've worked with for the last 20 years, a lot of them. Even in a really small way, it's not going to keep them going on a long-term basis, but it actually keeps them engaging with the audiences who they're familiar with in Oldham, but also looking at new and exciting ways of working. And I think we've worked with 5 different outdoor arts companies so far, and all of them have really embraced it straight away, wanted to keep that connection with the local authority. So that's been really encouraging to do. And we plan to do that at least for the next few weeks going up, and then we'll reassess our plans. One of the key things is also, from a local authority point of view, and I think most of us have been hearing on the national news, is local authorities right across the country are under enormous pressures, financial pressures, and delivering services, emergency services at the moment. So what impact that will have on culture and the wider sector will be interesting to see. But I think what the cultural sector is always good is responding positively to challenges, and thinking out of the box, and also I know in Oldham the art budget and events budget is quite small, and it's quite robust, and or hopefully robust, as in we don't get a lot of external funding, we don't even get private sponsorship. So in some ways our audiences are not huge, as in towards some of, say, Greenwich and Docklands and the millions of people that visit there, but also we're a lot less reliant on external funding, and also are not done through ticket sales because all our events are free within local authority. So at the moment that seems that could prove quite a positive thing on us being able to re-establish those events when it's right to do that.
Takki, you wanted to come in earlier, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar sort of point, really, and I won't go through it in detail, but the financial element is critical. I know that our Director of Finance is already looking at our future spend. So for Royal Greenwich Festivals, for instance, one of our awardees for this year asked if they could defer it to 2021, and I've been told basically nothing is sacrosanct for 2021. All budgets will be under review, everything. And just to echo Rachel's point, I think culture will come at the bottom of the list. And we will end this meeting on a positive note, but I'm going to get in a negative one, just because you need to know the threats around you. We need to set them out and come up with a plan. And I think the cultural sector, the outdoor events sector included, needs to be aware that we need to demonstrate social value of our work much more. And I think we need to develop increasingly sophisticated ways. I know the Arts Council have driven before this crisis, were driving their funding towards those objectives anyway. Emergency Exit Arts are experts at working with all sorts of different levels of social need, tying in with existing programs and working with a range of different commissioners, from children's services to adult services to public health, for instance. But I think we've got to get better at doing that and to demonstrate the value around it. And a big thing I think that's going to come back in local authority land in terms of commissioning is investment in prevention. And what better way of preserving people's and healing people's mental ill health and promoting their well-being through culture, community cohesion, and other things like that. But we've got to demonstrate the value of that investment. And I think that's a crucial point.
I think that's a really important point, and already it comes back to the question of vulnerable groups and your point earlier about the risk to everyone's mental health and well-being of this continuing. I mean, Brian's point about how good the government has been at frightening us all. I take your point. I mean, it's understandable, as Rachel says, that culture is going to come after food parcels. But I do think that we have a really important role in helping people make sense of what they've been through, of helping them come to terms with the grief of people they have lost and futures they may have lost, and a sense of what the world was like that they may have lost, and helping people to do that. And that may actually be more about smaller scale things, more intimate things that are still outdoors, still can be very moving, very important. And one of the things I found myself jotting down as listening to all five of you was whether one of the responses might be a lot more things, but much smaller things. That actually we've got a lot of artists, a lot of people who can do things, but it may be that we're bringing together 20 people or 30 people or 60 people at a time, not 600 or 6,000 for a while, and that smaller scale thing is a way of going towards people who are currently feeling vulnerable, as well as the people who are objectively very vulnerable for a variety of reasons. And I'd just be interested to hear, because we've got kind of 10 minutes left, if we could just go around everybody and hear from each of you in turn something about whether that direction is useful, or whether you have other ideas. Can we start with Gaynor? And another particular question to Gaynor, because it's come up in the chat a lot about risk assessments, and you were very clear at the beginning in terms of saying that, in effect, what you believed was that there doesn't need to be a change of behaviour of what people need to do. They just need to follow the guidance that will come out.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to say, seeing from the web chat, is, and I see people are saying, will they be able to still get PLI insurance? you should, there's no reason for you not to be insured in the normal way. I mean, the only thing that I'm saying, and I would say, I would be very surprised if any of your insurance policies gave you any cover whatsoever for people contracting COVID or coronavirus at your event. But in terms of your risk assessment, you would risk assess, and as long as you are not flouting government guidelines and you're not doing something which is clearly, outside of the rules, there's no reason why the normal types of incidences at your events that you would have, I don't know, trips or falls or something like that, would not be covered, because they've got nothing to do with COVID-19. So, it's quite simple that anything to do with COVID-19 is not going to be covered. But just turning up to an event is not, that's not about COVID-19. Just I mean that's anything could happen. You could have a pyrotechnic coming off the stage and hit somebody in the crowd. That would still be covered, just because it was an event. As long as you weren't having an event when you're not supposed to be having an event.
Yes.
If you still want to see what I mean.
Yeah. Thanks, Gaynor. Who would like to go next? Brian, maybe.
Okay, I was looking at the risk assessment chat going past as well. There was a couple of questions there. One especially from Karen Poley about risk assessment. What needs to go in a risk assessment? And as Gaynor said, exactly the same. There are rules and regulations that you have to comply with, but there's also the safety of the people that are coming to your event. That's what your risk assessment should be. And to be honest, your risk assessment should be alongside your planning. And so if you're planning for COVID-19, yes, it's going to be in your risk assessment. And yes, it might be quite high up in there because there might be a high risk. But hopefully, and this is easy to say, hopefully, going forward, we're moving away from people being scared of catching the virus and more interested in getting together and being together. And I think that there will come a point when, and again, it depends who you listen to. Who is going to challenge the government? At what point are we going to challenge what we're being told? And I'm not just being an agitator for agitator's sake, but the fear that they've instilled in everybody is now too difficult at the moment to get out of. And so they need to find a way. I posted online the other day, who would you believe if they came on TV and said to you, it's okay now? David Attenborough was the answer. Nobody from government at all. David Attenborough or the Queen were the two that came out. And I would go with that. And the confidence side of it is what's really going to drive this. I really think we need to instill confidence. And I agree, it's great that we can do smaller events that then build up to larger events. Also, somebody put on one of the posts about the high street. There are lots of shops and lots of large businesses who are going to be desperate to get people to come out. Partner with them, work together with them. They'll have money to spend on marketing. Why don't you become their marketing and do events and drive people to what they're doing? I think that's a great way to look for it. And just to finish off on the risk assessment side of it, we work at safety on all sorts of events, on the kind of things that Gaynor's talking about with massive amounts of pyrotechnic, and on the smallest street theatre shows. And what it all comes down to is making sure that everybody who's involved in it is as safe as possible. You can never make it 100% safe. And there's this magical thing that we have to get people to understand, and it's common sense. And I'll get slated now. I will get 20 messages saying you can't say that with regard to safety, but you can. And part of the law is that people have to look after themselves. So that's what we want, people to come along. And if social distancing is still an issue, you can provide everything for them. But if people refuse to socially distance, then what are you supposed to do? That's their lookout. So at some point, there has to be an element of common sense brought into all of this. And hopefully, positive message from the government going forward.
That's very interesting. It reminds me of, because I'm currently in France. There is one of the incidents that's happening is there was an unlawful football match in Strasbourg with several hundred people taking part both in the football match and watching it, and that's the kind of thing that presents the local authority and the health authorities with a huge problem, because they don't want to prosecute anybody, but they do want to test the people who were there, because they may suddenly find a cluster, because Strasbourg is one of the areas of France.
But this is where the track and trace will come in, and I don't understand. Again, I'm not here just knocking the government, but I don't understand why we're so far behind many of the Far Eastern countries who've had track and trace since January. I don't understand why we're so far behind on that. It works, and we could use that, and it would give insurers and people who are taking liability for events, it would give them a bit of comfort that they can prove that they've done their best, and people can be tracked and traced where they've been, and not blame events and not blame people coming together as an issue. And I think the football one's a really interesting one, because you bet your life if the arts and entertainment industry in the UK brought in as much TV revenue and things like that, people would be agitating for us to be back on the streets now. Yeah, as they are.
Let me go to a last word to Rachel, and then Takki, and then we'll finish with Dana.
I'm not sure what you want. We've talked about so many different things, but I think from talking about smaller events, and that probably encapsulate most of the events that I do. I mean, we range from 15,000 to 3,000 people in a town centre at approximate estimates for things. I think the difficulty with maybe encouraging smaller events until that confidence grows, and maybe we do need events to show our confidence, and that's the one thing I thought about. Maybe it's the bigger players. I'd throw this over to Takki, saying, you know, the people in our cities and the bigger scale events might have to show that confidence, and it might be then that gets the ball rolling and people show. But I think it will come from the sharing of good practice. I think the one thing event organisers is good at looking at common sense. It's about common sense. It's about communicating that confident message when we eventually go ahead with events again. That will be the key to providing the public with confidence, our performers with confidence, and also it might be our supporters. From my point of view, it would be higher up in local government giving me the go ahead. Even if I put the plans in place, I will need to show them that everything is in place for them to back me with that, and I'm confident we will get there with that. I think things are becoming clearer, and I think as things are relaxed, social distancing will be put in place, and I think forums such as this, discussing ideas, looking at practicalities and sharing that information will be the key to that. So that we're all talking, I think it's a bit of a northern saying, we're all talking from the same song sheet, and our approach, if our approach is all similar and it does encourage common sense, I do think the outdoor art sector will be the first up and running. I do have that confidence going forward.
Thank you, Rachel. Takki.
And just to add briefly on that, I agree with all of that. And I think, and some of the comments that are coming in through on the chat, it is about attitude to risk. The way that the government has managed this is about trying to do it through consent. Generally speaking, that's what we've had. We haven't had the sort of the very, very strict and punitive approach in some other countries. So you have seen people break the rules, as people have described here. The way I think we're going to go about it in our Royal Greenwich festivals, I talked about that at the top of the meeting. I think we're going to be looking at flow. We're going to be looking at stewards encouraging people to move through. There was an event we had with 30,000 people 2 years ago in the summer, but it was split across different parts of our borough. You can still walk across it, and people move very, very freely and easily. And I think it's about designing that and making sure that people can flow one way and loop back the other without pushing against each other. It's that kind of sense. But are people always going to be able to keep 2 meters apart? I doubt it. So I think we're going to have to take an approach to risk that is perhaps less than optimum. I think we've all, in our event plans that we've done throughout our lives, we've always tried to eliminate risk to the nth degree. We're not going to be able to do that with COVID. But the risk to keeping locked down, I think, is greater at a certain point. And we're going to have to, I'm going to quote the government again. We're going to have to rely on the science on the R number to tell us when it's safe to release from lockdown and then taking it an acceptable risk. Our best guess in Greenwich is that that's going to be at the end of August, beginning of September.
Great. Thank you very much. Dana, last word to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. I feel like I've learned so much from all of you already, and I'm sure everyone watching has as well. I'd like to address two things that came up in the chat box. The first of which was a bit of a conversation about articulating the value of the arts. I think beyond kind of coronavirus and how do we get people to get behind us, how do we make sure that we're not at the bottom of the priorities on local councils funding or private funders lists. People have mentioned quite a few, you know, big chunky bits of paperwork that have been produced, the Warwick Commission, the Durham Commission, you know, all these big pieces of paper that articulate this value. And I'll be honest with you, I think the thing that's really going to make or break this sector is the fact that, you know, people will not remember the Warwick Commission. People will remember the time that they were stuck in their house and a guy dressed up as Elton John came round on a roaming piano and sang to them. And that does a service to the articulation of the value of our sector that no ginormous report will do. So, you know, to those of you there out there who are thinking, yes, I'd love to do something, just go out and do it, because in doing it you are being an ambassador to the value of our sector and what we do in a way that no ginormous report ever will. And linked to that point, I just want to address the second point in the chat, which was very much about, you know, yes, I want to do something, but how do I earn money from it? At the moment, it's just looking extremely difficult, and I wish I could sit here and say, here's how you can earn money, but I can't. But what I found that throughout this crisis is most of the people who are doing really good stuff at the moment are volunteering. You know, they're making masks, they're delivering food parcels to their neighbours. If you can see your art at the moment as an act of volunteering, almost as a national service, you know, you're doing yourself a service, you're doing the sector a service, and you're putting us all in a much better position to articulate our value as we emerge from this.
Thank you very much, Dana. And thank you, Takki, Gaynor, Rachel, Ryan. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. The recording will be online tomorrow, I expect, and the conversation will continue online and with another webinar from EEA in 2 weeks' time. And if anybody needs cheering up now, I strongly recommend you Google Elton Wrong and watch this video playing the piano around some Lancashire housing estate. It'll put a smile on everyone's face. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.